Hi everybody, here's a new video for two-dimensional design. The first 3 or 4 projects, and one builds on the other. Just wanted to take you through it using a late version of Photoshop in case the older video is throwing you off with an earlier version of Photoshop. So all the projects begin by creating a new canvas. So you do that by going File, New, and this is real important right here. Change pixels to inches, and we're going to make this canvas slightly rectangular, so I'm going to go 10 wide, 12 tall in inches, and this is important, 240 resolution. That's 240 pixels per inch, okay? And we can leave it in grayscale for now, and then create. Okay, so here we have our blank canvas. Over here on layers, we have one background layer. It's wise to put your square and your circles on independent layers so you can move them around. So here's a very simple implementation. I come up to the upper left, grab the rectangular marquee tool, leaving yourself a margin, start in the upper left and click and drag, but hold the Shift key, and this is important. Notice that without the Shift, it's unconstrained and it can become any number of shapes, but when I hold Shift, it is constrained to a perfect circle. I'm sorry, square. Also, when we are doing our circles, we'll constrain it. So I'm eyeballing the distance on the right, the top, and the left to be roughly the same. Okay, and I've done this on its own layer. You could choose either layer, it doesn't matter. And then we stroke it, edit, stroke, and something about 15 pixels is probably good, centered on the line, and say OK to that. And then deselect. The shortcut for that, which we'll be constantly using, is Control, holding Control down with your pinky. If you have a Mac, it's the Command, and then the letter D as in deselect. Boom, just like that. So now I'm going to click on the other layer, and I'll come to the center, and when I click and hold the rectangular marquee, I find the elliptical marquee. And again, I want a perfect, just one perfect circle. Not multiple circles, not ovals. And I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt if I start from the center. And what happens is it not only constrained it to a perfect circle, but holding down the Alt key allows it to grow away from where you started it. So I'm just going to do something like this and move it down. I can use my arrow keys to nudge it around and really center it. Okay, and this time I'm just going to fill it. So I'm going to come over to my bucket tool, and if you don't see the bucket, it could be hiding under the gradient tool. So click and hold that, grab the bucket, make sure you're on a new layer, which I am, and then just click it. And then once again, deselect, Control D. So now what I'm interested in, I'll do 2 of these, is this circle as it relates to this square. That's it. Not lots of circles, just one. And the amount of negative space is an important consideration. But how does this circle relate to that square, and how does that sort of relate to human emotions? And find an adjective to describe that. So now I'm going to take the Type tool and come down to the bottom below this here, and I'm thinking words like proud or bold or self-centered. I'll just keep it simple though and call it proud. I'm going to put it in all caps. And oops. I'm also going to make it bigger. So I'm coming up here and making it at least 36, 48, 60 point. And I'll leave it in the sans serif. I happen to have Times Roman. I mean, that's a serif font, so I'm just going to go with that. It's fine. And then I click on the Move tool and move this into the center here. Okay. Notice that the Type tool created its own new layer. So I'm going to do one more. So let's see here. I'm going to click on this circle, and I'm going to free transform it smaller. So I don't have to start the whole project, but oh, by the way, to save this, File, Save a Copy. And that'll allow you, and click on your computer. That'll allow you to JPEG it, which will collapse all these layers into one and compress the file size. So this is project 1.1. Okay, we need to make 6 or more variations for each project, but you'll see it's very quick. Once you've done the first one, then variations move really quickly. So project 1.1, where am I putting it? Right now it's in downloads. That's fine, I can leave it there, but I could choose any of these other folders. So I'm going to hit save, and then JPEG compression option will pop up. Come on. And always save it at 12. For these very simple projects, that's not as important, but the more gradients, the more continuous tone you have in a piece, the more important it is to save it at maximum. So I'm going to say OK. Alright, so now it's saved it as a JPEG, super important, and I still have all my layers. So now I'm going to click on the main dot and do the opposite, make it really small. And I'm going to use free transform to do that. So that's Control T. And I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt again, and I'm going to create a little dot. And I'm going to take the Move tool and move it around, maybe down here. So what's a word that can describe in human emotions this tiny little dot in this huge space? So how about lonely? Check mark. And Move tool. Okay. And then File, Save a Copy. Because Save a Copy forces it to collapse all these layers so you can save it as a JPEG. That's a bit new in Photoshop in this version. So this is project 1.2, so I'm just clicking on the old file name. I'm going to put it also in downloads here and just change the 1 to a 2. And save. Again, the compression, 8 would be fine, but get in the habit of saving it at 12. Now, what if you wanted to get bigger with this dot again? And unfortunately, once you've thrown away pixels, if I free transform this, and that's holding down Control and the letter T as in Tom, and I hold down Shift and Alt to constrain it and pull it, look what happens to it. See, it's all pixely, and that's kind of nasty. So instead, I'm going to hit Escape, and I'm just going to go backwards in my history. See this button in the upper right? Click that, and I'm going to bring it back to when it was large. And you can always make something smaller, but you can't make it substantially larger. Okay, so Control T again, and let's bring it sort of, okay, perfect circle in a perfect square. And I'm trying to find words to describe what we're seeing here. So let's see, I'm going to bring it right to the center this time, and there we go. So it looks like a well-adjusted dot sitting in its happy place. So I'm just going to call it happy. There's no one right answer. You just have to look at it and be true to what you see. And there's 3. Okay, so same deal, save a copy, put it in your local computer, then upload it to the drive. A couple of more ideas. We can distort this circle and find other variations. For instance, okay, so when we're on the layer with the circle, I clicked layer 2. I can come up here to filter, distort, and let's just try a couple of things here and see what happens. So this one is called wave. Number of generators, I have 5. Wavelength, I'm going to do something like that. Amplitude is making it bigger, and scale is at 100. And let's see what happens here. Yikes. Good. So this is a variation, and I would not call that happy. Scattered, check mark, center it, save a copy. On your computer. That's also new to this version of Photoshop. This is actually 4. I didn't save number 3, but I can click this. So getting to 6, you can see, is not going to take a lot of time. So I didn't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch and rebuild all this. I'm just using one dot and playing with it. Okay, keeping it this simple, this clear is what this project is about. Define your spaces, find an intuition or an intuitive sense of how this relates to that, and name it. Okay, I've gone on long enough. That's it for project 1. So, see you on the blog.